This is career-ending. Jasmine Crockett thought she could get away with it, but Kash Patel just pulled the rug from under her. The shocking proof? It's worse than anyone imagined. Emails, leaked recordings, and first-hand testimony, all pointing to one undeniable truth. And when you see what's inside, you won't believe she ever thought she could survive this. The media won't tell you this, but we will. Buckle up, because once these facts are out, there's no going back. What happens next? You need to see this. Jasmine Crockett was never one to back down. From her early days in politics, she had built her reputation on confidence, sometimes even arrogance. She spoke with authority, moved with purpose, and carried herself like someone who was untouchable. To her supporters, she was bold. To her critics, she was reckless. But no matter what, one thing was certain. Jasmine was not afraid of a fight, until now. The moment Kash Patel's expose dropped, it felt like the ground beneath her shifted. At first, she scoffed. Another political hit job, she thought. She had survived these before. Accusations, smear campaigns, manufactured outrage. It was all part of the game, wasn't it? But this time, something was different. As she sat in her office, staring at the screen, she felt her stomach tighten. The headlines were brutal. The clips Patel released weren't just taken out of context. They were devastatingly precise. He had done his homework. It wasn't just about one moment, one slip of the tongue, or one decision. No. Patel had stitched together a pattern, one that painted a picture far more damaging than anything she had prepared for. Her phone buzzed relentlessly. Texts, emails, missed calls. But she couldn't bring herself to answer. The people who had stood by her, defended her, cheered for her, were they still on her side? She wasn't sure anymore. Denial was her first shield. "This is ridiculous," she muttered under her breath, pacing the room. She rehearsed the statements she would make, the dismissive tone she would use. Kash Patel is a liar. This is an orchestrated attack. This is nothing but right-wing propaganda. But as the minutes dragged on, the weight of reality pressed down on her. The comments were pouring in, not just from her usual detractors, but from people she thought were allies. There was doubt, disappointment, even anger. And for the first time in her career, Jasmine felt something foreign creep into her chest. Doubt. What if she had underestimated Patel? What if the damage wasn't just political, but personal? What if this wasn't something she could spin away with a clever rebuttal or an aggressive press conference? She clenched her jaw, forcing the thought away. Numbers she wouldn't break. She had fought too hard, climbed too high, to let one man, one story, bring her down. But then came the second blow. It wasn't just Patel's video, it was the fallout. Her staff was tense. They weren't saying much, but their silence was telling. She could see it in the way they avoided her gaze, in the hesitance in their voices. Even Lane, her most loyal advisor, seemed nervous. "You should address this," he finally said, carefully measuring his words. She crossed her arms, raising an eyebrow. "I will. I always do." "No, Jasmine," he sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I mean, really address it, not just dismiss it, not just attack back. People are questioning you, and if you don't handle this the right way," she cut him off with a sharp glare. "The right way?" she repeated, her voice laced with irritation. "What exactly is the right way, Lane? To apologize? To back down? To act like I did something wrong when I didn't?" Lane exhaled slowly. He had seen her like this before, when she was cornered, when her pride refused to let her see what was right in front of her. "I'm saying," he hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "Maybe this is bigger than just political spin." Jasmine scoffed, shaking her head. "This is politics. It's all spin." Lane didn't argue. He just nodded, stepping back. "Then I hope you're ready for what's coming next." That was the moment it hit her. This wasn't going away. She opened her laptop again, scrolling through the responses. Some defended her, but too many didn't. The cracks in her foundation were growing. Her supporters were split. Her donors were quiet. The media was circling like vultures. And for the first time in a long time, Jasmine felt alone. Anger was her second shield. She threw her phone onto the couch, letting out a frustrated sigh. Patel thought he was clever, thought he had won, but she wasn't about to roll over and let this define her. Fine. If people wanted a fight, she'd give them one. She called her team together, storming into the conference room with the fire back in her eyes. "We need to hit back. Hard," she ordered, slamming her hand on the table. "I want a full takedown of Patel. Every skeleton in his closet, every questionable decision. Find it and put it out there." A heavy silence filled the room. No one moved. No one responded. She narrowed her eye. "Did I stutter?" Lane shifted uncomfortably. "Jasmine," he hesitated. "Maybe attacking Patel isn't the best move right now." Her head snapped toward him. "Excuse me? I mean, it could backfire," he continued carefully. "The public is already skeptical. If we go full attack mode, it might just make us look desperate." She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Desperate? Lane, I am not desperate." Another silence. And that's when she realized no one in the room agreed with her. Her team, the people who had always stood by her, who had always followed her lead, They weren't on board this time, and that terrified her. Fear was her third shield. She didn't show it, of course. She wouldn't. She couldn't. But deep down, she felt it. That sinking, gnawing feeling in the pit of her stomach. This wasn't just another news cycle. This was a defining moment, and she was losing control. She forced herself to stand tall, to maintain the sharp, unshaken demeanor that had always carried her through. "Fine," she said flatly, walking toward the door. "If you won't do it, I will." She left without another word. But behind her, she could hear the whispers, the worried glances, the quiet realization among her team. She was unraveling, and they all knew it. Jasmine Crockett had always thrived in chaos. She knew how to turn scandals into stepping stones, how to twist attacks into political victories. She had built a career on being unapologetic, fearless, unstoppable. But this time, something felt different. She sat stiffly in her chair, staring at the muted video playing on Olivia's phone. Kash Patel's calm, deliberate voice echoed in her mind. And that's the real Jasmine Crockett. Arrogant, entitled, willing to say whatever it takes to hold on to power. But here's what she doesn't want you to know. Every word landed like a blow. Not because of what he was saying, but because he wasn't the only one saying it. The public was saying it now, too. The same public that had once adored her. Jasmine inhaled sharply and looked up at her team. Lane stood near the window, arms crossed, his face unreadable. Olivia sat across from her, nervously tapping her knee. An old habit Jasmine had noticed months ago. And then there was the silence. Not the usual strategic silence of a team waiting for direction. This was hesitation, doubt. They didn't know if she could come back from this. And that realization made her stomach tighten in a way she didn't like. She forced a smirk, trying to regain control of the room. "So what's the plan?" No one answered. She scoffed. "Come on, guys, one bad news cycle, and you're all acting like my career is over." Still silence. Lane shifted slightly. Olivia avoided eye contact. Jasmine felt something cold and unfamiliar settle in her chest. She picked up her phone and scrolled through the notifications, her fingers moving faster than her mind could process. Everywhere she looked, headlines, tweets, posts, comments, it was the same message. Disappointment, not outrage, not anger, disappointment. And somehow that was worse. She clenched her jaw and tossed the phone onto the desk, the screen flashing with more unread messages. A text from a donor. "We'll be pausing contributions until further notice." A text from a bus senator she had once considered an ally. "You need to fix this. Fast." And then, the one that hit the hardest. A text from her mother. "Baby, what's happening?" Jasmine's breath hitched. Her mother never texted her about politics. She barely even understood half of what went on in Washington. If even she had seen the video, then it really was bad. Her grip tightened around the armrest of her chair. "We've handled worse," she said, forcing a laugh. "We'll handle this too." Lane finally spoke, his voice careful. "Jasmine, this isn't like before." She rolled her eyes. "Oh, please. Every few months they come at me with some ridiculous—" "This isn't just they," Olivia interrupted. "This isn't just some right-wing attack. This is everyone." Jasmine blinked. "What are you talking about?" Olivia swallowed. "Even your supporters are backing away." A beat of silence. Jasmine's heart pounded in her ears. That wasn't possible. Her supporters were loyal. They knew who she was, what she stood for. They had defended her through every controversy, every attack. They wouldn't turn on her now, would they? She snatched her phone back and pulled up Twitter. And then she saw it. Not just the usual criticism from the opposition. Not just the same recycled insults. This time it was her own base questioning her. "Jasmine, what were you thinking? I defended you for so long, but I can't anymore. You lost me with this one." Her throat tightened. No. She could handle attacks. She could handle outrage. She could handle being the villain to the other side. But this was something else entirely. She suddenly felt exposed in a way she never had before. For years, she had carefully crafted her image. Not perfect, not polished, but strong. A fighter. Someone who never backed down. Now, that image was collapsing before her eyes. And the worst part, she didn't know how to stop it. Jasmine exhaled sharply and looked up. "All right," she said, shoving the panic down. "Here's what we do. We go on the offensive. We hit back. We discredit Patel before this gets any bigger." Olivia hesitated. "Jasmine, no." Her voice was sharp. Too sharp. "We control the narrative. That's what we've always done. We find Patel's weaknesses, his contradictions. There has to be something we can use against him." But neither Olivia nor Lane moved, and that's when it hit her. They didn't believe it would work. She forced out a laugh. "Come on, guys. You're acting like I've already lost." Lane exhaled. "Jasmine? No," she snapped. "Don't Jasmine me. We've handled worse than this. We just need a distraction. Something bigger. Something—" "Lane, cut her off." "Jasmine," he said, slowly, carefully. "This isn't going away." She glared at him. "And why not?" He exchanged a glance with Olivia before turning back to her. "Because," Olivia finally said, "they're not mad at you. They're disappointed in you." Jasmine Jasmine froze. That word again, disappointed. Her breathing slowed. She had spent years shaping her public image, not as a perfect politician, but as someone who fought and someone who stood her ground. She wasn't supposed to be the kind of person who let people down, and yet that's exactly how they saw her now. Kash Patel hadn't just exposed her mistakes. He had changed the way people saw her. She wasn't the fighter anymore. She was the fraud. And the worst part? She could feel it. For the first time in her career, she wasn't sure if she could fight her way out of this one. The internet was on fire. Kash Patel's expose had detonated like a political nuclear bomb, and Jasmine Crockett was at its epicenter. Her name dominated headlines. Her words were everywhere, clipped, dissected, played on loop, and the worst part? No amount of damage control was working. Jasmine sat in her office, fingers digging into the leather armrest of her chair. Olivia was across from her, phone in hand, eyes wide with something between panic and exhaustion. Lane stood near the window, arms crossed, his jaw set tight. The air was suffocating. Jasmine's phone buzzed. Again, another text from a donor, another canceled fundraiser, another statement distancing themselves from her. She ignored it. There was only one thing on her mind right now. The video. The video that had changed everything. With a slow, measured breath, she picked up her laptop and clicked play. This is who Jasmine Crockett really is. Kash Patel's face was calm, composed, deadly. No anger, no dramatic theatrics, just facts. Hard, undeniable facts. And that's what made it so much worse. A recording from a private event. Jasmine laughing, a little too arrogant, a little too dismissive. They'll believe whatever I tell them. That's the beauty of politics, right? Pause. Jasmine's breath hitched. She remembered saying that, but not like that. It had been a joke, a throwaway comment. But here, it sounded calculated, manipulative, cold. And people weren't just watching it, they were believing it. Another video, a leaked conversation from a closed-door strategy meeting. Jasmine, rolling her eyes. Voters don't care about the truth. They care about who sells the best story. Jasmine's hands clenched into fists. She could feel Olivia and Lane watching her, waiting for her reaction. But what could she say? The words had come from her own mouth. And Kash Patel, he wasn't twisting anything. He wasn't spinning the narrative. He was just letting her own words destroy her. This one was worse, much worse. It was a montage, edited with surgical precision. Every time she had been dismissive in an interview, every moment she had mocked a political opponent, every hypocritical stance she had taken, back to back, side by side. And the music? It wasn't dramatic. It was quiet, tense, unsettling, like watching the inevitable downfall of someone who didn't realize they were already sinking. Jasmine's stomach twisted because she knew exactly how this looked. To the public, this wasn't just an attack. This wasn't just politics as usual. This was confirmation. Confirmation of every doubt people had ever whispered about her. That she wasn't authentic. That she was just another opportunist. That she had been lying all along. She swallowed, forcing her voice to stay even. This is a hit job. Silence. Lane exhaled sharply, rubbing his temple. Olivia shifted in her seat, and Jasmine knew. They didn't believe her. They weren't going to say it, but they didn't believe her. She slammed the laptop shut, jaw tight. Patel is manipulating the narrative. This isn't manipulation, Olivia cut in, her voice quiet but firm. Jasmine, these are your own words. Jasmine froze. She knew Olivia was right. She just didn't want to admit it. Her mind raced, searching for a way out, a counterattack, a defense, anything. But what was there to fight? This wasn't just one bad clip. This was a pattern she couldn't explain away. For the first time in her career, she felt powerless, because no amount of damage control was going to fix this. The fallout begins. She didn't have to check Twitter to know what was happening. The hashtags were already trending. Crockett exposed. Jasmine lied. We deserve better. And the worst one? Not my leader. She had spent years building a brand of strength, defiance, confidence. But that same brand, it was turning against her. The comments weren't just from her critics anymore. They were from her own supporters. I wanted to believe in her, but I can't ignore this. I defended her for so long. Now I just feel stupid. How did we not see this before? That last one made her chest tighten, because it wasn't just about this scandal. People weren't just angry at her. They were angry at themselves for believing in her. And that was the kind of betrayal voters never forgot. Patel's final blow. Then came the final clip, the one that sealed her fate. It wasn't just a video. It was a side-by-side comparison. On the left, Jasmine, 2 years ago, standing behind a podium, promising she would never betray her voters. On the right, Jasmine in that private conversation, saying they'll believe whatever she tells them. The hypocrisy was undeniable. The truth was brutal, and the consequences were immediate. Her poll numbers collapsed overnight. Her donors vanished. Her allies distanced themselves. No one wanted to go down with her. She was political poison now. And the worst part? She wasn't even sure if she deserved to survive this, because deep down, she knew the truth. This wasn't Patel's spin. This wasn't some smear campaign. This was her own doing. She had spent years believing she was untouchable, that no scandal, no attack, no controversy could ever bring her down, but she had been wrong, and now she was paying the price. The final blow. Jasmine's phone buzzed, a message from an anonymous contact. Patel isn't done. There's more coming. Her heart stopped. More? More what? But she already knew the answer. There was always more. She had built a career on boldness, arrogance, and risk-taking. And now every misstep, every offhand comment, every careless moment was about to be weaponized against her. Because once the dam breaks, you can't stop the flood. And Jasmine? She was already drowning. As the dust settled, Jasmine Crockett found herself standing at the crossroads of her career, a political figure teetering between survival and complete destruction. The weight of Kash Patel's revelations had hit her harder than she anticipated. And now, everything she had worked for, the trust of her constituents, the faith of her supporters, her own identity as a rising star in politics, was hanging by a thread. Her office, once a sanctuary of strategy and confidence, felt colder now. Each passing minute seemed to stretch longer, echoing the reality of her situation. Her staff had turned wary, her closest allies now reluctant to meet her eyes. Lane, her ever-loyal campaign manager, had been her only constant in the storm. Yet even he, who had always seen the best in her, was now visibly concerned. Jasmine, it's time to make a choice. You can keep running, keep denying, but that's just going to make things worse. The world is waiting for you to say something, anything, Lane said, his voice thick with uncertainty. He wasn't wrong. The media was relentless, bombarding her with constant updates on the growing backlash. People wanted answers. They needed to hear from her, directly. But the question was, how could she even begin to respond? The pressure was mounting from every direction. Jasmine stared out the window, her thoughts racing. She could feel the weight of her pride tugging at her. It was hard to imagine apologizing, hard to picture herself admitting she had been wrong. After all, she had built her career on being a confident, unflinching leader. Admitting defeat, or worse, acknowledging that she had let down those who believed in her, felt like an unbearable blow. But deep down, she knew something had to change. The silence wasn't just deafening, it was her biggest enemy. The world had already made up its mind. Some viewed her as a victim of a political attack. Others, however, saw her as a symbol of everything that was wrong with the political establishment. Arrogant, self-serving, and indifferent to the concerns of ordinary people. Her allies were dropping like flies, her donors pulling out, and her approval ratings plummeting faster than anyone could have predicted. Her pride, once a pillar of strength, had become her greatest weakness. As she sat there, paralyzed by the weight of the decision she had to make, Lane's voice broke through her thoughts. Jasmine, you have to understand something. The way forward isn't about winning or losing this battle. It's about how you handle the fallout. The media, the voters, they'll respect you for owning your mistakes. But if you keep deflecting, keep hiding behind your pride, they'll never forgive you. Lane's words hit harder than she expected. She knew he was right. The longer she waited to make a decision, the worse it would get. But admitting fault, showing vulnerability, could she really go down that road? Her heart pounded in her chest as she realized just how much was at stake. This wasn't just about her career anymore. It was about her character, her integrity, and how she wanted to be remembered. Jasmine picked up her phone and began scrolling through the messages, the notifications never seeming to stop. Each message brought a new wave of guilt and frustration. Some were messages of support from the few who hadn't abandoned her yet. Others were blunt critiques, some bordering on harsh, pointing out her flaws, her missteps, and her failure to acknowledge the damage she had done. It was time to stop hiding. She couldn't control the narrative anymore, but she could control how she responded. For once, she had to stop being the politician who played games with words and start being a person who took responsibility. She sat down at her desk and began typing. Her fingers hesitated over the keyboard as she formulated the words. How could she express what she felt? How could she balance the need for accountability with the reality of her situation? The stakes were so high. One wrong move, one wrong statement, and it could all be over. But after a long pause, she finally hit send. Her message was raw, direct, and unfiltered. It wasn't the polished, rehearsed speech her team had been preparing. It was her, the real Jasmine Crockett. I know many of you are angry, disappointed, and disillusioned by the revelations that have come to light. I get it. You trusted me, and I've let you down. I've spent my career fighting for transparency, fighting for justice, and fighting for change. But now, I'm the one who has to take responsibility. I can't pretend that what was said doesn't matter. It does. The message continued. Politics is about trust, and right now, I've lost that trust. But I want you to know that I'm committed to earning it back. I won't run from this. I won't hide behind excuses or half-hearted apologies. I will do the work. work. I'll listen, I'll reflect, and I'll learn. I don't have all the answers right now, but I know that I've got to do better. As soon as the message went live, the world reacted. The media, initially skeptical, began to shift their coverage. While some remained critical, others found her candidness refreshing. Her supporters, still reeling from the scandal, began to cautiously offer their praise. The silence, the uncertainty, the image of a leader too proud to apologize, all of that began to fade. But as the public response began to shift, so did Jasmine's internal struggle. She had made her peace with the fact that she could not control how everyone would react. Some would still see her as a failure, others as a hypocrite. But in this moment, she realized the importance of owning her truth. For the first time in her career, she was no longer trying to please everyone. She was focused on pleasing herself, her conscience, her values. The resolution wasn't perfect. It wasn't a clean fix, and her career was still hanging in the balance. But it was a start toward rebuilding, toward redemption, and perhaps most importantly, toward regaining the trust she had lost. And so, with a deep breath, Jasmine Crockett began the long, painful process of rebuilding her career, not by pretending to be someone she wasn't, but by embracing the woman she had become. The path ahead was uncertain, filled with setbacks and challenges. But for the first time in weeks, she felt a sense of clarity. Her pride had been shattered, but it had made way for something more powerful: humility. This was her final turning point. There was no going back now. The aftermath of Kash Patel's revelations marked a critical turning point in Jasmine Crockett's life and career. The scandal, once a fleeting political setback, had become a defining moment. Her reputation, once polished and admired, was now tarnished. The political world had turned its back on her, and the public's trust, so carefully cultivated over the years, was slipping through her fingers. Patel's exposé had done far more than just reveal her flaws. It had forced Crockett to confront them head-on. The media frenzy, the public outrage, and the calls for accountability were only part of the equation. What was truly painful for Crockett was the internal reckoning. As a rising political star, she had built her career on pride, self-confidence, and an unwavering belief in her own righteousness. But now, those same traits felt like chains. Her arrogance had led to her downfall, and there was no way to ignore the truth any longer. In the first few days following the exposure, Crockett was defensive, angry, and reluctant to accept the gravity of the situation. She pointed fingers, blamed others, and continued to protect the pride that had gotten her this far. However, with every passing hour, the pressure mounted, and the whispers grew louder. What was once a minor controversy had exploded into a full-blown crisis, and Crockett realized that the facade she had worked so hard to build was crumbling faster than she could keep up with. Despite her initial resistance, the moment of clarity began to surface. It wasn't just about saving face or weathering the storm. It was about understanding that true leadership requires humility. Crockett had spent years portraying herself as someone who could do no wrong, someone above reproach. Yet, as Patel's revelations painted a more complete picture of her missteps, Crockett had no choice but to face the harsh truth. She had been wrong, and she had to own up to it. In the quiet of her office, away from the public eye, Crockett began to reflect on her past decisions. She realized that much of her career had been driven by pride and the desire for power, often at the expense of her integrity. Her reluctance to admit mistakes, her tendency to blame others, and her belief that she could always outsmart her critics had left her vulnerable when the truth finally came to light. The path forward was not clear. Crockett knew that rebuilding her career would be an uphill battle, but the first step would be to rebuild her character. She had to make a choice: continue to deflect blame and risk losing everything, or confront her mistakes and take responsibility for them. The choice wasn't easy, but the weight of the scandal was too great to ignore. As she sat in silence, Crockett began to understand the full magnitude of what had happened. This wasn't just about political failure. It was about her identity as a leader. The public might never fully forgive her, but the journey to redemption had to begin with self-forgiveness. She could no longer afford to hide behind the mask of invincibility. The public had seen her as a perfect leader, but perfection had led to her downfall. The only way forward now was through vulnerability and growth. Patel, in his calm and methodical way, had forced Crockett to confront her own flaws. While his actions had been undeniably harsh, they had exposed something much deeper: her inability to face the reality of her mistakes. The question now was whether Crockett could find a way to grow from this experience, or whether her pride would ultimately prevent her from finding true redemption. Whether or not Crockett could salvage her political career remained uncertain, but the lesson was clear. Leadership is not about perfection. It's about acknowledging mistakes and using them as stepping stones toward improvement. Crockett's story was not just a tale of political failure, but a cautionary one about the dangers of pride and the importance of humility in leadership. In the end, the legacy of Kash Patel's exposé was not only the public scandal it created, but also the personal transformation it sparked in Crockett. The true test of her leadership would not be determined by her ability to reclaim power, but by her capacity to learn, grow, and evolve from the mistakes that had almost cost her everything. As we close this intense chapter on Jasmine Crockett's downfall and Kash Patel's shocking revelation, it's clear that the story doesn't end here. What happened to Crockett could happen to any of us. The hard truth is that everyone falls, but not everyone knows how to pick themselves back up. So the big question remains, what does this teach us about leadership and accountability? Crockett's fall from grace isn't just a political scandal. It's a powerful reminder that pride can be your biggest enemy. When you're too stubborn to admit your mistakes, it's not just your career that's at risk. It's your credibility, your trust, and your future. No one is invincible, and that's a reality we all need to face. Now here's where you come in. How are you going to apply this lesson to your life? Think about it. What are you avoiding? What decisions, actions, or even mistakes are you holding on to because you're too proud to admit them? This isn't just a political issue. It's about us as individuals. If we keep hiding behind our pride and refusing to take responsibility for our actions, we're only setting ourselves up for failure. It's time to break free from that cycle. Take accountability, own your mistakes, and most importantly, learn from them. But here's the catch. It's not easy. Admitting when you're wrong requires courage. It requires a shift in mindset. It requires a willingness to grow and evolve. And that's where you have the power to stand out. Imagine if we all started owning our flaws instead of pretending to be perfect. Imagine the change we could create in our communities, our relationships, and even in the world of politics. So, here's your challenge. Take a moment today to reflect on one area of your life where you've been avoiding responsibility. Whether it's at work, in your relationships, or within yourself, admit it, own it, and commit to doing better. Don't wait for a scandal to force you to face your truth. Start now. Comment below with one action you're going to take to hold yourself accountable today. Let's create a movement where we aren't afraid to admit our mistakes and grow from them. If Crockett had done this earlier, maybe her story would have been different. But now, she has to rebuild from the ground up. You don't have to wait until it's too late. Learn from her mistakes and make the choice to be a better version of yourself today. Are you ready to stop hiding from your flaws? Are you ready to take control of your future, no matter how many mistakes you've made in the past? The power is in your hands. It's time to step into your truth, take accountability, and embrace growth.